Batman. Good luck, Harry Potter.
Well, cover me with eggs and flour and bake me for 40 minutes.
Hello and welcome to ScreenMasters with me, Bav.
And me, Fluff.
And today on the show, we are going to be taking a look at the TV series The Legend of Vox Machina, available on Amazon Prime and based on the work of Critical Role. Who are Critical Role, you ask? These questions and many more will be answered. But before that, I would like to turn to some words. Now, this week is a bit of a change of pace. Now, I realise I'm also going to be about 2 weeks out of date by the time anyone hears this, because the football actually finishes this weekend as we record this episode. But for any English listening, I would like to paraphrase Silo and say, we know that it is coming home. We don't know when that will be. We only know that today is not that day. That's for any of my Silo fans out there, which has just started season 3, which is very good. So, yes, well, hello. What's going on in your world?
Well, as you know, I've been lazy for a couple of weeks. I've had a bit of time off, which is, despite the jokes of you and our little close circle, I don't have holidays every...
with you from next year, because I hit 5 years at my current workplace in August, and I get 5 days extra holiday a year. So from next year, I'll have 31 days plus bank holidays. So I think I might be challenging you for the most holiday now.
Possibly. Yeah, that sounds about right, actually, which is absolutely fine. So, no, yeah, I've had a bit of time, of a bit of an R&R sesh.
Nice.
So I'm not joking. I've kept myself busy. I've relaxed, but I've also kept myself busy. As you know me, I can't just sit around and do nothing all the time. It drives me a bit.
Or like I've got next week off. I intend to have a day or two where I literally do nothing, not very much. But like you say, I couldn't do that for 5 days straight. I need something to do.
So yeah, I've caught up with friends, caught up with family. I built, a big old part of my Dungeons and Dragons Lego set, which was gifted to me by my brother, which we'll maybe have to share a photo of that and post.
Yeah, I was going to say you need to send me a picture of it.
Because that's quite an epic. That's been an ongoing project of mine for about a month now. It's close to be. I left a little bit of it to build with my nieces, but I didn't have as much time with them here. Building stuff as we had other stuff going on, so that's still on the go. However, I did treat myself to a couple of days of indulging in some old school films, and so I'm gonna just quickly, because there was a lot. I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot, but I'm just gonna go off the hits. So, like one day, I woke up and I was like, let's just have a quick look. Let's see what's on Netflix. So, started the day off watching The Fifth Element.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
nice little starter to the day. Then I was like, you know what? Let's watch The Matrix. I fancy something a bit actiony. So ended up watching The Matrix. Ended up watching the Matrix trilogy that day.
Nice.
It's one of those ones where you watch the first one and you realise how special that film actually is. Yep. Especially when you watch the other two after the fact, which don't.
Agree. I was listening to a podcast this morning, a usual regular Saturday morning podcast for me, and funnily enough, they happened to mention The Matrix.
Yeah.
And there's like 4 people on the panel, and 3 of them were saying, yeah, it holds up, it's amazing, it's still as good today as it was back then, which 100%. I totally agree with. And then the one contrarian on the panel was like, no, it's rubbish. Doesn't hold up at all. He actually then went on to say, the second one's better. And I was like, right, okay, now your opinion is null and void. Off you go.
Yeah.
I don't dislike the second one. There are bits
of
it a lot, but
yeah,
what the first one was. The first one was a self-contained idea that I still believe to this day they had no intention to make any more of.
No.
And then it did so ridiculously well. It was almost a step change for the entire of cinema that they did obviously go on to make more.
So it was interesting to rewatch some of these films, because again, sometimes you don't watch these for 5-10 years or so, maybe more. So it'd been a while. So it was one of those afternoons I was like, you know what, I'm just going to watch old school films. And I did watch the new, whatever it was, Resurrections, and Jesus Christ, you can see the fact that it goes very meta and jokes about itself in the film that they basically had to do it because Warner Brothers forced the hand. It's terrible.
yeah.
It's really, really bad.
Warner
You watched the
Brothers
first one.
it whether you want us to or not. So
Yeah.
it was it Lana or Lara? I forget which one of them went, oh well, fuck it, I'll do it then, because at least I can put my spin on it and it's not just corporate overlords doing whatever they want to do with our property. So
Yeah.
difficult.
So it was funny watching. You know, you don't have much of a budget, and this is the kind of people that you got on the first film, and then we give you infinite amount of money and just watch the train wreck commence, kind of a deal, which I think is always hilarious. I also got round to finally watching Prey, which you'd obviously mentioned before because I'd watched Predator Badlands.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
I watched Prey and decided again to do myself a double bill. So I watched Prey and then I watched Predator Badlands immediately following. I had a good old time while I was off, just watching a bunch of shit. It was fun. So yeah, I mean, Prey, I really thoroughly loved. I thought it was enjoyable that it took it out of its comfort zone of, the usual modern day era kind of stuff. Again, you know, whether we're going to get a live action one set in, you know, Roman times or Viking times, we don't know. We've obviously got the Killer of Killers animated thing, which is already kind of done a few of the web weavings. Curious to see where it's all going to go. Even more so after having watched Prey and then Badlands, I was like, yeah, I'm on this train. I'm really enjoying this. I like this refresh of this little side of the universe for the Predator stuff. The Yautja. My apologies.
Yeah, the Yautja. Yeah, no, I've said before many times on this podcast, I do like what Dan Trachtenberg's doing, and although I may not, you know, all of them may not hit with me, I've said it before, I'd rather you took a swing and it didn't work out for you, rather than just doing what's safe. What concerns me is that the last rumours I heard swirling about the next Predator thing is that apparently Arnie's back and all this stuff, and that's one of the things that does annoy me, because I thought he'd done quite well to, yes, blend bits of, you know, Prey features the gun, the flintlock pistol, that shows up in Predator 2 and then is in Killer of Killers. So, like, is a thread that he's picked up on from the old films. But it didn't, you know, none of it sort of went, hey, here's Arnie over here, until obviously they released Killer of Killers, and then they decided to re-release Killer of Killers with a new ending that did show Arnie and Danny Glover in the world. And it's like, no, I liked that you weren't pulling on the nostalgia strings for what you were doing. But yeah, unfortunately, the rumors are that they're going back to that nostalgia well.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I feel like looking around these days, the nostalgia well isn't doing as well. I mean, you know, look at Masters of the Universe. That's nostalgia, and that sank like a lead balloon.
I don't think it deserved to, though.
I mean, I have yet to watch it, so we'll get to that. I know you have watched. So yeah, right. So I'll just buzz through again. I'm trying to get through. There's been about again as usual. I've been dipping in and out of a few of the animes. Dr. Stone finally finished. What a fantastic series! I mean, honestly, having watched a lot of it quite quickly and especially getting towards the ending, it really does itself justice. I've got to say, fantastic series. Again, the educational side of like watching an anime, I was enthralled at times, so that was fun. One that everybody might be reading about, which I actually didn't find too enthralling, which was Daemons of the Shadow Realm, which has been new. I think it's like a lot of hype behind it, which I don't feel is justified myself. The artwork is lovely, the story is okay, but it wasn't one of those ones that I was itching to watch immediately, you know, following the previous episode kind of a deal. So, you know, again, not everything is for everybody. But weirdly enough, another one which I enjoyed was Beginning of the End, which is similar to the premise of Masuku Tensei, which is a guy has died and is reincarnated. They love the reincarnations and other things in anime. There's a certain trope of several aspects which pop up anyway. This one is different because the guy who is reincarnated was basically a dictator who was like the king of the world and used technology and ruled with an iron fist and was a real asshole by all accounts. And he's reborn as a young child, and obviously grows up with a different perspective on things. It just, again, it's one of these world building ones, but a different take, because it's somebody who had a shitty life before and wasn't a bastard, and then you kind of see him understand that maybe his life previous wasn't all that great. So yeah, that was that. I am reading, and I have just finished today, just before we started this podcast. I'm 2 books now into Dungeon Crawler Carl, which I'm sure everybody may have heard of recently. I don't know whether you've heard of yourself.
Strangely enough, that podcast I was listening to this morning is that they were also talking about these books called Dungeon Crawler Carl or something.
Yeah, so it's a series which I know Seth MacFarlane has picked up and is going to be doing a series based on. Whether it's going to be live action, whether it's going to be animated, not sure. I'm being honest, I would probably go down the animated route based on reading the first couple of books, but you never know, you could do it live action. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure you'll hear a lot more of that as it comes on. There's been like 7 books, so I'm only 2 in. So yeah, trundling on with that.
Saying it's nearly finished. The last book
Yes.
is this year sometime or something.
I think the latest book recently came out, so I think it's going to be perhaps the next one, which is, again, one of the reasons, because I've been going through various books of late, and yeah, that was another series. I was like, you know what, there's like 7 books there, let's start it. I really enjoy it. And then
you were saying about anime tropes. I believe it's isekais are those ones where a character gets reincarnated or summoned into a different world to the ones that they are. There's, you have your shonens, your isekais, your slice of lifes. There are different terms for it. I think isekai is the word for that particular one that you were saying about.
Well done. And then, yeah, the other 2 things that I watched was Toy Story 5. So I went to the cinema with our good friend Jord and his girls, and I had a wonderful experience, because I really just enjoy the Toy Story films. I'm not going to lie. I was like, I've given up at this point expecting the franchise to have a finality to it, so to speak. As long as they can tell a good story and I find it enjoyable. And they did, and I did, and that was kind of the thing. I, sat there and chuckled, and, the girls told me that, I laugh loudly, which, Mick, well, you've sat next to me in the cinema. Yes, I'm an animated person, unfortunately. But they said it actually just added to the fun for them, because they were like, if Uncle Fluff is laughing, this must be funny. But apparently there were some boys on the road which thought I was too loud. I don't really care. Anyway, so I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of those franchises that I didn't expect to be still going and still building momentum and still being just as good as it was. At this point, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of which one. Maybe the previous one, 4, was maybe a bit of a weak link in the chain, possibly. I don't know. That's, subjective as always. And then the final one, obviously, is the one that I went and watched with you, which we'll cover in a bit, I'm sure.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure about covering that one between the 2 of us, because I think we have very different opinions on it, and I think it's one of those ones where we're just going to end up having to agree to disagree with our opinions on it.
Sure.
I don't know whether that'll be any fun for the listeners.
Sure. In which case, I'll just say the film we went and saw together then was Supergirl, and I didn't outright love it. I'm not gonna pretend otherwise. Yeah, I'm not sure it was the best second film to be doing out of this new DC universe, but hopefully I'll be proven wrong further down the line.
It'll be interesting to see whether we get the director's cut rather than the studio cut.
True, very true.
But then everyone will go, "Oh, the studio cut, is that what we got in the cinema?" Yeah, you did. And guess who made the studio cut? Oh, that was James Gunn. So, yeah, I found that quite interesting. Apparently, hours before the premiere, they still hadn't decided what the final needle drop song was going to be.
Okay, yeah, that's problematic.
It's got some problems, I wouldn't deny, but I did fucking love it. I had a great time with it. I really did. I don't think Lobo was necessary in the slightest, but, I think if you look at that film and you remove his entire plot line, nothing changes. You know, he doesn't. Well, other than he doesn't save the girls a couple of times when I really wished he hadn't have done anyway, because they were doing such a good job of showing these women didn't need a man to come in and save them, and I quite liked that side of it. You know, obviously, like you say, we went to see it with my two kids, and my daughter, a 17-year-old, felt incredibly empowered by it, and the way the film portrayed these female characters. And again, it's a superhero movie with two female leads.
Mhm.
You tell me the last good female-led superhero movie, Captain Marvel, maybe argue that the two leads in that are female, but I'd kind of argue that Ben Mendelsohn's kind of a lead and it's more of an ensemble. But you know, Black Widow and The Marvels are the two that came into my head, and I was like, well, it's better than either of them by a long shot. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'll just flick through some stuff. I watched a film called Apex, which is Charlize Theron and Taron Egerton. She's like a thrill seeker who experiences a tragic event at the beginning of the film and sort of goes off around the world trying to put herself in extreme situations. But it's this thing of you almost think she half wants to kill herself by putting herself in these silly scenarios. She's in Australia, and this guy takes a shine to her, and it's all a bit sinister behind the scenes. It's quite a good film, actually. I didn't realize it was Taron Egerton for about half an hour. I was watching this film and was like, hey, this Australian guy's pretty good. I wonder who he is. And yeah, turned out it was Taron Egerton. It wasn't an Australian guy at all, but he was doing very well at it. I went to see Disclosure Day, the new Spielberg. I was bored. I think the whole film is a lead up to the most interesting thing, and then when it gets to the most interesting part, it stops. I think it's a real shame. It's got a lot of Spielbergian flair about it, but it's not enough to pull it through for me. We discussed Spider Noir last episode. My favorite VFX channel, Corridor Crew, have since done an episode about Spider Noir. It was not shot for one thing or the other. It wasn't necessarily shot for black and white, and it wasn't necessarily shot for color. It was actually shot with both in mind. Because they showed some sequences of the color version that I hadn't seen when they're like in the neon lit streets and stuff, and actually it looked really cool in that sort of, where they called it true hue color or whatever they called it. But yeah, it was built for both. I still think black and white's the better way to do it, because the CGI does look a bit ropier in color. It's easier to hide the joins in otherwise. And I've watched Masters of the Universe. I had a great fun with it. I thought it was really, really entertaining. It's silly, it's nonsense, but it knows it is. It doesn't expect you to think it's anything other than. They do some really funny stuff with like the names of the characters. Obviously, you've got characters like Fisto and Ram Man, and in the modern day, those names are insane. So they do quite a funny explanation of it in there, which I won't give away because it's quite funny. Even Jared Leto's pretty good in it. I don't know whether he was actually on set in the suit acting or whether it was just an ADR voiceover performance, but he is actually quite good in it. And the reason it works for me is because they were very clever about it. Obviously, you've got a new... I'm not particularly familiar with the guy playing Prince Adam. I've not really come across him before. And his sort of female sidekick in the film who's with him a lot, I don't really know her work either. They've not done a huge amount, either of them. So, when you've got two youngish actors new to the craft, if they're going to be left alone for scenes for a while, the quality can drop and things like that. So they do a very clever, they make a good decision early on. Idris Elba's in the movie as sort of Prince Adam's right-hand man, And they make sure that he's in the movie the whole way through, so that it creates a situation that when it's the two young ones and him, he sort of brings them up to his level. It's one of those a rising tide, a rising tide raises all ships sort of thing. Because they're working with someone of the caliber of Idris Elba, they perform better. It comes across a lot better. And I think that was a very clever thing to do, to sort of drive the movie forwards. It sets up for a sequel, which I think we can all say will never happen, because, like you say, regardless of what I think about it, it didn't. No one went to see it. It didn't do very well in the cinema, and I don't blame people. I said when they announced the movie, I said, "Who's this for?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, because if you're doing this to appeal to your 40-year-olds and your 30-year-olds who remember this, with older and younger, who watched it when they were a kid, fair enough. But those people are not going to generate new life for your franchise. And it is, to me, very much a movie pitched at those people. I don't think you're going to get a lot of new young kids watching this movie going, "Oh, well, now I love He-Man."
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just not pitched at them. It is pitched as a, "Hey, did you like Master of the Universe when you were a kid? Well, look at it all grown up now. Isn't it cool?" And yeah, it's cool. It's fun. But like I say, I'm not the guy who's going to drive the franchise for the next 25 years. Why are you pitching it at me? That's the one thing I couldn't really understand with it.
Yeah, there's some of these like 80s properties which they've, tried to do the Hollywood treatment of. I think back to when they did the A-Team film, and I just sat there as a huge fan, of the original series. I was like, why are you trying to recreate Lightning in a Bottle? Like, that series was a series. It was a TV series. It had a formula. You can't recreate that on the big screen. They've tried rebooting Knight Rider several times, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, Val Kilmer was the voice of Kit in the remake, early noughties, because I watched it and it was a bunch of shit.
They've done the same with like Flash Gordon, and this is one of those properties again. Like, we're seeing a bit of a resurgence at the moment in some of the comic forms, especially with what they're referring to as the Energon universe, with Robert Kirkman, a guy who wrote all of The Walking Dead and stuff like that, and he's kind of doing that, great world building thing with Transformers and incorporating that into a G.I. Joe universe, and they're now bringing Mask into it as well, which is fascinating. I think it's great. The way that they've interwoven some of these stories and the world is quite ingenious, but they're doing that in the comic book capacity, and that's sometimes a little bit of an easier medium. Whereas I think when I look at Masters of the Universe, I don't see it being a big thing in this day and age. Transformers, sure, that's a film that everybody was enthralled when the live action came out because it was the first one that we'd all seen, from kids even, But the difference there was there's been concurrent like kids TV series of the Transformers for as long as we've been alive. So even if we've not seen those ones, it's feeding into the kids of the next generation and the one after that and the one after that. So when some properties come out, there's already a fan base there. They're not necessarily fans of the original, but they're built on that momentum over the years. And with Masters of the Universe, I just looked at it and I was like, I don't know why. There's been no build-up. But again, I suppose with some of the IPs in this day and age, they take a bit of a risk. And they go, can we get a successful franchise out of this? Let's hit the reset button on it and see what we get.
Yeah. Yes, in the age of franchise cinema, that is very often the decision. That's kind of all I've got to bring to the party. Other than, as I said, Series 3 of Silo has started, so I'm watching that. I urge anyone with an Apple TV subscription to watch that show. It is incredible. It is what Lost should have been. Because at least I know it's based on books. The books know where they're going, and Apple are giving them enough time to adapt all of the 3 books. So you are safe. It is not.
Is this the last series of it?
I don't know so far. I think, because I believe the end of season 2 is the end of the second book, and I believe the beginning of season 3 is the beginning of the third book. And the third series has 2 different things. I don't want to say too much because it does spoil stuff for earlier seasons, but here's how I'd describe it. If anyone watched Lost, I believe it was the end of the third season, the 2-parter at the end of the third season of Lost, where you were watching what you thought were flashbacks for Jack. But the whole way through the episode, things didn't quite line up with what you thought was happening. And then it transpired right at the end that actually what you'd watched was a flash forward, and that him and Kate were off the island. And it was like a mind-blown, what the fuck kind of moment. It was incredible. The end of season 2 of Silo does a very similar thing, where it shows you something completely out of context, and you go, what? Where the fuck is this? I recognise that thing there. I've seen that in the series I've just watched, but what the fuck is it doing here? How did it get here? Unless this is before. Am I watching? Oh, and it just raised a shitload of questions. And like I say, I loved that about Lost. That was one of the best things. They call them mystery box shows in the modern day, and it was one of the greatest. The problem was that they didn't know the answers to half of their fucking mysteries. They just started creating questions, not knowing where the answers were going to be found. Like I say, I have more faith in Silo because I know it's based on a series of books that finished and brought a satisfying conclusion to the storyline. So my hope is that at least we will get answers to the questions. And again, so far, the questions that they've answered, you're not left asking a lot of stuff afterwards. It introduces new questions for the following season. But it did something very interesting at the end of the second, beginning of the third. And yeah, I'm 100% back in to see where this is going, because it's gone a way I did not see coming at all.
Yeah, I know our good friend Jord is a big fan of the show. He'd spoken with me about it. I think when I tried to watch it a while back, I think I'd watched the first 2-3 episodes, and it just, again, somebody who watches a lot of stuff, sometimes you got to know you need to be in the right mindset.
Yeah,
and some shows, and I wasn't at that point, so it's one that I'm going to revisit. But I'm like, sometimes if, again, to your point, when there's a finality there, if I'm like, oh, I got 3 series, I can binge that over a weekend. That's great for me.
Yeah, and I'd like to say the first season does very much start weird, because the first 2 to 3 episodes are focused on characters that you then don't see again. It starts with David Oyelowo and I forget the name of the other lady who's in it to start with, but they're only in it for like the first 2 or 3 episodes, and then it's all about Rebecca Ferguson's character and Tim Robbins and Common going forwards. But like I say, the first 2 or 3 episodes look at an entirely different time and space, and then you realise as you continue watching the series that those 3 episodes were really important and set up where the rest of the show is going to go. So you couldn't not have them there, but it is a bit weird. Because obviously, I'd watch trailers saying, hey, Rebecca Ferguson fronted show, and then you watch the first 3 episodes and she's barely in it. And you're like, I thought this was Rebecca Ferguson. Where is she? And it's like I say, it's because they do something else, which then informs the rest of it. I'm going to pause there. Am I coming out of your telly or something? I can hear myself coming back through the headphones, your side.
No, you're coming out through.
Is playing back into my headphones, my voice.
No, 100%. Everything's coming through my headphones.
Okay, your microphone is definitely picking me up somehow, so that may be a problem.
I occasionally hear that with you and or Dave occasionally when we'd be gaming.
Okay, well, let's see how it goes.
Again, with that, I was like, there's 3 of us, so you never know whose microphone might be close to something or other. But no, you're coming out of my headphones, and yeah, they're on my head.
Okay, all right. No worries. Let's go into the main topic then. Would you like to give us some background on Critical Role and how they got started and how we ended up with an animated series?
Sure. So if you haven't already heard of Critical Role, a small little company which started off as a group of voice actor friends who sat around and decided to play Dungeons and Dragons. There is a lot more to that story, rest assured, but go away, have a look at documentaries that they've got on their own website to learn more. Trust me, I could bore you with all of that, but it's probably better coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So, group of friends, and they're all voice actors, and they sit around and they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. And eventually they get to a point where one of those friends outside of this circle says, you know what, you should do this online. I think people would watch it, and they did. And funnily enough, a lot of people did enjoy watching their D&D adventures online. After a time, this is now during the second of the campaigns. The first campaign being the Legend of Vox Machina. During the second campaign, the Mighty Nine, they started a Kickstarter fund, which was to just do a short, hour and a half special of Vox Machina, and they put a Kickstarter out there. The Kickstarter was so immense and such a resounding success that they earned 10 times the amount of money that they wanted within a very short space of time. And it obviously piqued the interest of Amazon, who then decided, you know what, we'll go in. And so they sorted their art and everything out through Titmouse, the production company, and lo and behold, we get a Vox Machina animated series in full, which again was a huge thing for them because initially this started off as a D&D campaign. Just again, you can go and watch any of those on YouTube. They then did a Kickstarter, and it resulted in a ongoing and probably going to complete the entirety of Vox Machina on Amazon Prime as an animated series, which, in this day and age is quite a resounding success, from taking something that you own from the starting point of a D&D campaign to a full-on animation. I think that's pretty good. So that is, in a nutshell, how the show began. Now, the cast is a group of, as I say, voiceover actors. You will probably have maybe heard some of the names. You will definitely have heard some of the voices if you play any video game or watch most anime series in this day and age.
Dubbed anime or you've played a video game, either in the last 20 years, you have heard at least 3 of these people's voices at some point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could go through the names, but again, go look that up for yourselves. We'll reference them by name or character anyway. So there you go. Now, obviously, I remember I introduced this to you.
You did?
I can't remember who introduced it to me, but obviously I started watching the D&D side of stuff, and then you, I think, ended up watching. So, what was your, first impressions from watching the animated?
So yeah, I mean, I think it was around COVID time when they sort of really, really blew up, didn't they? Because it was, everyone was at home and everyone wanted something to do and watch. And I sort of got into it at that point, the D&D stuff online, and started listening. I never listened to Vox Machina. They were in the middle of the second campaign, I think, at the time. So I think I started the second campaign from the beginning, and worked my way through that. I mean, when I first watched the animated show, it how much of a breath of fresh air it was to me was shocking, because it wasn't. I've made clear my issues with anime, modern anime, very many times. I am fed up of the whingy high school protagonist, and I'm also fed up of the overly dramatic nature of everything, even in the first episode of your series when it's the easiest boss in the world. You're screaming like, you're up. The way I put it is, you're already turned up to 11 in episode 1. So when you actually introduce stakes and things to overcome in episode 12 or episode 20, where are you going? You started at 11 right at the beginning, so you've got nowhere left to go. It can't get more dramatic because you've already made it the most dramatic it can be at the beginning. And there is none of that. These are characters with pasts and trauma and stories and history, but they are full grown people who know who they are, know where they fit in the world, and most of them, and I prefer watching those sort of characters. The swearing is the first thing that stood out to me, because it is quite, I watch South Park and that, but again, South Park there is a look to South Park. It is not a normal looking animated show, I would argue, because they have their own distinct animation style that they've always used. So, you're watching this and it looks like an anime crossed with a really high end animation, and people are talking like I consider normal human beings to talk. They do swear and drop F-bombs and shit and whatever it is. And I really liked that. And it made the dialogue and the character interplay feel very natural in a way that I hadn't really experienced with anything else. One of the big things that I love about it, and still love to this day, is when certain things happen, in the back of my mind, I'm like, ooh, I bet they rolled a natural 1 at that point. Or, ooh, they clearly rolled a 20 on a D20 for that one. I like some little examples I've got from, I think it's the end of season 1, maybe, or season 2. No, season 1 is the Briarwoods, isn't it? So it's not that one. It's the first dragon. So I think that's season 2, isn't it? And then the third season was the Chroma Conclave and all the dragons, wasn't it? With Thordak as the boss.
Yeah.
But it's like Grog gets the last hit on the first dragon that they kill, and he's yelled, "I would like to rage before doing it." So in my head, that is and again, if you go and look this up and look at the original Crit Roll stuff, it is a how do you want to do this moment in my head, because he's said he wants to rage, so he's going in for his rage fight. So I bet he did a really good roll. He got a really good hit with it, and that was the final blow. So he then, I'm going to kill him in this really cool, awesome way, sort of thing. And I love those sort of moments. There's Grog is blinded at one point and swinging his stuff against Lord Briarwood. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I wonder whether he was at disadvantage at that point, so he'd got disadvantage on his rolls. So, and I'm sorry, this is getting a bit inside baseball, as they would say, on Dungeons and Dragons 5e and how the rule set and the mechanics work. But that is always what I think with this thing is, I bet they did this. I bet they did that. There's a bit at the beginning of season 4 where Vex loses. Hang on, am I getting that right? Let me just check myself. Yes, Vex is the sister. Vax is the I always get those two mixed up. Vex is fighting someone and Trinket is within her little trinket. And she sort of goes to grab it, but the baddie grabs it first and runs away. And again, in my head, I'm like, I bet she lost the roll for that. And I love looking at it like that. And knowing what I know about D&D and the way the game is played and the rule sets and everything. And I mean, these guys push the rule set of that game to its very, very freaking limits. And it gets more crazy as their campaigns have gone on, as you and I both know. But it was absolutely a breath of fresh air compared to anything else I'd watched before. And I loved the D&D-ishness of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it to your point there. It is that thing of like, if you know a little bit more about that aspect of it, the D&D side, it just adds another layer for you. Again, it's what I've said to you about going playing Baldur's Gate. That D&D aspect is so ingrained in it that you get so caught up that you spend 8 hours and you're like, oh, that Jesus, how many rolls? Because it's the universe and that world building. And again, I love, as you say, the interplay between them. Now, I don't know whether it was the same for all of them as time went on because of COVID and restrictions, but I remember seeing them all recording together for the first season, and that interplay between all of them, it just works so very well. To your point, these are characters that are very comfortable within themselves, but the voice actors, I should say, playing them have already played them for the last 5 to 10 years, for example. Sorry. So there is that comfortable thing of they know that they're already ingrained in those characters. They know where they're stepping with them. They know where they're going with them. But the interplay with each other is, again, part of what makes it. If you watch an episode of the D&D, a lot of it is just them talking to each other about certain aspects of it. Yes, there'd be a battle there, and again, to your point, that funny thing of, if something shitty has happened, it's because they threw the dice wrong and something went wrong. And I love that has been built into the story. Like, they're not shying away from any of the things that happened and just kind of papering over it and go, well, actually, no. If something shitty happened, they try and reference it in the show.
Yeah,
Because,
go on.
It's you've got to show your mistakes as well as your big successes.
Yeah, I agree. The big sequence that was for me, I think it's the first season, isn't it? When Vex, they're going down into this thing and someone touches something and Vex is going to die.
Yeah.
And Vax makes a deal with the mother, the matron of ravens, to save her. And I remember first watching that going, I bet that didn't actually happen. Like, there's no way they would have nearly killed a character this early on in the campaign. And then, obviously, Crit Roll has quite a big fandom behind it. And someone did a side-by-side on YouTube of the sequence from the animation and what happened in the actual D&D Crit Roll show. And it is pretty much bang on exactly what happened. And it was those things that made me go, oh, wow, yeah. So you're like you say, you're keeping the bad moves in, the bits where it goes wrong. You're keeping those in, and you need to. Because that's how you create stakes. Watching that show, thinking that a character could die within the first season, that's nuts. You're not going to do that. That's crazy. But because it can be unpredictable by its very nature, it is cool when they do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's that thing of, this is a series, be that, from the first all the way through to the ongoing fourth season at the moment and into probably the final. It's that thing of, this show has stakes. Each season, there is a, quote unquote big bad, so to speak, that they've got to kind of overcome. But they're still dealing with their own personal anxieties and their own personal issues.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's, all of my family were killed, and I've got to deal with the fact that I'm the only survivor, and I was tortured and beaten. Another person is, we were, ostracized from our family. Our father shunned us, so we both left, and we've come into this world, and it's just us together. You've got these really differing personalities and these differing ideologies, and they're constantly bickering and arguing with each other. It's that found family feeling very much.
Yeah.
But that's always part of the fun, to watch those interactions and how these brothers, sisters, so to speak, clash with one another, because that builds the tension just as much. And the relationships that come out of it. Again, we've got differing romantic relationships in this one. That adds that ever layer of tension to it. And as we go along, it just becomes a world builder. It just expands upon itself. Now, obviously, Matt Mercer, bless him, put all of the majority of the legwork in to help build this world. And that's kind of the cool thing, that he sets these scenarios and put these characters, and again, appears in every episode as some background character or not, which again is another lovely little Easter egg, that because he did the voice of every other character other than the main cast when they actually did it, it's only fair that he gets to do that. But as the show goes on, there's bigger and bigger stakes. The supporting cast expands. The world begins to expand. And it just becomes a little bit more enjoyable at times, I find.
Yeah, I'd agree. I also think, I mean, I know we don't want to talk about Mighty Nine, particularly the second series based on campaign number 2, but I have found interesting watching both of them. I feel like Vox Machina plays out a little bit more like I imagine the original D&D did. Whereas Mighty Nine, I think it feels to me like they're treating it more like a traditional TV show. And what I mean by that is that you don't get a lot of backstory to start with Vox. It feels to me, the backstory comes when the backstory would have come in the D&D. Characters sit down and have a talk while they're on watch one night. You know what I mean? So you only get to the backstory when the characters have a chance to converse, and one character gets the chance to say, "Oh yeah, well this is where I came from. This is where I did." Whereas the Mighty Nine obviously starts before they meet up and become a group anyway. You spend a couple of episodes, which I assume were, like prequel bits that they will have done. I know they've talked before about the Not and Caleb's journey to where they get to at the beginning of the campaign. I think we're hearing a bit of that, whereas that would have been an off-screen bit of play between the people to get used to their characters, level them up a little bit, and get them ready to start the campaign.
Yeah.
And I think you see a bit more of that. And then obviously there is an entire flashback episode for a character in the Mighty Nine. And you don't see that a lot in Vox. Although there was a bit of a flashback in season 4 for Pike, but I just think Vox plays a lot more like the D&D would have, whereas Mighty Nine, I think they've looked at what happens over the entire run and gone, right, let's start laying the seeds here. For example, I don't remember Caleb and Bo being particularly at each other's throats at the beginning of the campaign. Maybe I've just forgotten. I don't know. But, there is very much a battle between them in the first series of the Mighty Nine. And that is important because it becomes important a lot later, and it introduces, because they're diametrically opposite ends of an argument, it laid seeds, and, there's things to overcome. It's good writing. It's good way to build a story. So I do think they've taken some learnings from Vox and sort of applied those to Mighty Nine. I do prefer the 20-minute episode format, I'll be honest. So I kind of wish Mighty Nine was 20-minuters, but
you see,
that's
that's where we completely differ, because there's definitely that that element of they have done Vox Machina and they've, I'm not going to say learn from mistakes because I don't feel there's any been made, but you can always build and learn and grow from what you've started on. And I look at Vox Machina, the way that it was paced and the way that it was put together, that it was a lucky shot that they managed to get the series to be made. And by keeping it at that 25-ish minute and the way that they paced it and things like that, it felt a bit more friendly with the atmosphere of this could be a one and done. This could be the series that, we do, and it will get a season and then that'll be it. And we'll be really, really thankful that we got that. And obviously it was a resounding success, understandably so, because it's great. Objective. It feels like, as you say, they've gone on to do the other series and they've seen the way that the storytelling goes in the second campaign. Now, I haven't seen all of the first campaign of Vox Machina, so I'm just as much in the dark about how it entirely ends as anybody else. I know bits, but I don't know it all. Whereas the Mighty Nine, I watched the whole of the campaign. So I've seen those changes a little bit more. I do think that the added time, again, for somebody who loves the show, especially the Mighty Nine, I love that it gives me like 40-ish minute episodes. And I found at times with the latest episodes of Vox is that I could have done with an extra 5 or 10 minutes world building or expanding on things a little bit more. But again, that's just me being a little bit greedy to wanting more of it. And it's that age old thing of leave them wanting more. And I do find myself with each of the Vox episodes, I do want a little bit more out of them. I find the Mighty Nine episodes have balanced themselves out quite well. We will get to the Mighty Nine in the future. I want to get a couple of seasons of that under the belt, I think.
Because I think if we tried to fit Mighty Nine in with this, we'd end up rushing.
Oh, most definitely.
Fit it all in, and I don't want to do that. So no, we'll give Mighty Nine, another season or something, and then we'll treat that as its own beast when we get to that point. I think you're really right, and particularly the fourth season. The fourth season has a very clear structure. It was released in 3-episode batches, week on week. And it is really, really engineered to be a 3-episode arc. It's almost like old school comic books where, you'd get a 6-issue arc and then you're on to the next one, and each issue would end with a cliffhanger to get you to buy next month's. I really think if you look at it, the 3rd episode of each batch has a cliffhanger at the end to make you come back for the next one. I agree with you that I want more, but like you say, because we differ in the way, I don't want the episodes to be longer. I just wanted more episodes. You know what I mean? I still wanted more. I agree with you, but they've done the leave them wanting more thing. Although, having said that, I got to the end of the 4th season and was completely shocked because I had it in my head that was the final season. But clearly they can't be leaving it the way they have. So there must be another season because they don't bring it to any sort of resolution, really. In fact, the end of it is sort of almost like a Brave New World moment where you're like, Christ, where do we go next? But so I'll be interested to see. I mean, I have a lot of questions, particularly about the 4th season. And like you say, neither of us have watched the Critical Role version of it. Like, I'm interested to know, did they leave a year gap? Obviously not in real time, but did they?
Sure.
One day
I know.
Sit down and go, right, it's 1 year later.
Sure.
Everyone's gone their separate ways. Here's us getting the band back together. We're introducing Tarry and Darrington. Again, we do need to cover Tarry and Darrington because, good God.
Yes, we shall. We shall get there. We shall get there.
But, I found it really interesting to wonder, have they gone, oh no, we've kind of churned through most of what we wanted to do in Vox. There's just this last arc to go through. But we want to do something more interesting with the characters, and obviously, like Scanlan, and it's the first few episodes are getting the band back together, aren't they? But they still don't get Scanlan back in. And again, I'm like, okay, well, why? Is there a reason behind that? Did Sam Riegel just go, problems? Was he unable to?
No. So I do know the answer to that one. So they played around. Now I think it's been more so noticeable having watched the beginning of the Mighty Nine. Again, we'll get to that one eventually. Because I've had the luxury of seeing both. With this one, I'm just going based on what people have told me or what I've read. So there was a gap in time previously. So this 1 year gap didn't necessarily occur exactly as it has been foretold, so to speak, at the beginning of the series. Obviously, the big thing is that Ashley Johnson, as an actress, was out and about and doing other things while they were doing this. So every once in a while, she would just disappear for episodes at a time. So her absence has kind of been folded in a little bit to this story, which is quite cool that she's got, especially with this 4th season, a little bit more screen time, because she really didn't have much screen time at all during that campaign at times because she was off doing a TV show, or she was starring in the Avengers, bless her. So it's those little things that you just kind of go, oh shit. And at one point during the campaign, Scanlan does basically feel like, I think it was Sam needed a change from the character, so he wanted to bring in somebody different. But all of the tension and all of the problems that have been built up is in one of the episodes that we kind of get, where he says, do you know my mum's name? Do you know this about me? Do you know that about me? Yeah. And that is a very visceral Sam Riegel when he initially does it in the campaign. They've changed the dynamic of it when they've done it as the animated show. He separates from them, really pissed off, and they're not on speaking terms, and that's where Tarry comes in afterwards. Whereas this is a lot more, they've gone their ways, and then they go and see him. There's a bit of animosity there, but everything's cool. It's really not that case from what I understand in the campaign. So I think they've just softened that. But again, it's them understanding the medium now and getting the story that they want to tell told without still honoring the original, source material. We hear it all the time when they talk about books or comic book adaptations or whatever. They're still having to go based on source material, but they also want to make sure that it's not too restrictive.
Yeah.
So to your point, bringing in another character this late in the game. Now, you asked me the question the other day. Was it? I think it was last week when we went to see Supergirl, and you didn't know who actually did the voice of Tari.
No, I did not.
Which turned out to be Wayne Brady.
Yeah, I fucking love that guy.
And again, I loved it. You're surprised, and you're like, oh my, I love him. He's so good. And I think that again, like I'm just literally just read out a couple of the names that we've had so far. Like we've got Dominic Monaghan and Christ, I'm trying to remember who.
What? Who you played?
No. I'm trying to remember. I know that I can't remember how many of them. I know that they've got a couple of the Hobbits so far, and obviously they've got. We've had Andy Serkis in the other one. It's Dominic Monaghan and God. The other, it's Mary and Pip, basically. They're both appeared in it.
Billy Boyd.
There you go, Billy Boyd. Thank you very much. So they've been in there. Lance, bless him, late great Lance Riddick played Thordak. Just so many of the supporting voice actors have been fantastic.
David Tennant, General Krieg, LeVar Burton is the voice of Undead Thordak, which I hadn't realised until I was flicking through some stuff earlier. It lists Cheech Marin as the voice of Trinket.
Yeah.
Fucking John Heder. I ain't seen him since Napoleon Dynamite. And Mark Strong, they seem to like. He's does voices in Mighty Nine and Vox, so they're clearly keen on him. Good old Robbie Damon, getting him in to do it. Stephen Root doing some voices. I love that guy too. And again, a sort of a who's who of voice actors. People like Kari Payton, Fred Tatasciore, I think his name is, Troy Baker. Like, they're perennial voice actor people. So obviously they come in to do stuff as well. Gina Torres, Kelly Hu, Indira Farmer. There's just so many names. And, it tells you something, doesn't it? When all these people are like, hey, I want to be a part of this. Stephanie Beatrice as well. You know what I mean? It's like these... You wouldn't expect these people to necessarily be interested in doing some hokey little Dungeons and Dragons animated show. Yet there they are, queuing up to get in on it. Yeah, Felicia Day as well. You just keep scrolling through and you see Lou Diamond Phillips, just names popping out. Henry Winkler plays Pike's dad, It's crazy how many people they got on this. And they're all brilliant. They really are.
I think again it's a testament to how well loved they are, but obviously the people behind the scenes, as much as this is their story and everything, putting together an animated series, especially in this day and age, I imagine is no easy feat. And Sam Riegel and Travis Willingham are the two guys that are very much at the front and center of the adaptations. Sam's won countless Emmys for various other things on American TV, and he's like a casting, he's a voice casting director and stuff like this, and everybody comes out and they're just like, they have such an amazing experience and they just give them something fun and something new. And for a bunch of actors or voiceover people, sometimes some of the rules are a little bit too serious and or a little bit too silly. They get to go into this little playhouse and have a little bit of fun with everybody else.
Yeah. And it is really good at that, at the tonal the tonal shifts. You know, a show like Scrubs used to be so good at that. That was always my shining example. You'd be laughing your ass off 1 second, and then crying your eyes out the next, and it never felt you never got whiplash from the experience. And again, this particularly the fourth season. I mean, the other seasons do contain some darker material and some harder stuff and trauma and all that. But particularly, like you say, it's Pike's arc in this final season. You know, it's such a relatable thing that she goes through, and you can entirely understand why she makes the decisions she makes. But she is then faced with being on the opposite side of a conflict to her friends. And, you know, all the bad blood, as you say, then comes back, and it becomes relevant, that world building in the beginning and the arcs and setting the characters back up for where we find them. But yeah, you know, there's some really quite dark and challenging material in this fourth series, I think. But as always with this show, it absolutely earns the right to go down that path, and it sticks the landing when coming to deal with it. You know, again, we didn't, you know, like I say, I know we feel differently about Supergirl, but there was one line in that film that stuck with me no end, where the young girl says to Kara, what's the line? I remember the second part of it. I can't remember the first. You're something, but you're something. And then the last line is, you're not perfect, but you're good. What is it? You're not nice, but you're kind. You're not always nice, but you're kind. And you're not always perfect, but you're good. And that line really stuck with me as that's the way we should be for everyone. You know, none of us are perfect. We're all just trying to do the best we can. And a lot of the time in this world, I think everyone should just take a second to appreciate that most people on the planet are just doing the best job they fucking can, given the hands that, you know, the hand of cards they've been dealt. And you don't know what cards, you know, what deck the person you're talking to is playing with. I'm kind of stretching the metaphor now, I'll admit, but you don't necessarily know the hand that they've been dealt. So why not treat them with a little bit of compassion and assume that they might have a slightly shitty deck that they're pulling from, you know? And maybe your deck's better, maybe your deck's worse, who knows? But that's not what it's about. Just be a bit nicer, treat people with a little bit more compassion, and I just think the world would be a nicer place. And again, it's those sort of vibes. Listen to me talking like one of the kids. It's those sort of vibes that I think Vox is very good at getting over as well. You know, they are a very open, welcoming, judgment-free. You know, they're very pro be kind, as it were. You know, and it's really nice when that comes through in what they're doing as well. And I feel it. You know, I feel there are moments. What is it again? The kids say, "I feel seen." You know. There are bits that they say where I'm like, fuck, I identify with that emotion. That's insane. You know, you're fighting a fucking dragon, but what you're saying hits to the core of something that I'm experiencing right now that, you know, isn't me fighting a dragon.
Yeah. I think it again, it's a testament to the show, you know, be that if you watch the D&D live action version equivalent, or would you call it live action, or just the D&D sessions? I suppose live action would imply something else, I suppose. But yeah, if you watch the D&D session, or if you watch the animated, there are those moments of levity and absolute ridicule, and it's just hilarious because them just beating the shit out of each other or doing something stupid, or, you know, just the scene where, you know, Grog grabs Scanlan at one point and just kind of wraps him up into his chest because he's going to freeze, and he's just like, stop. Oh, I feel really warm. And, you know, just those moments of complete and utter levity. And then you get the episodes, to your point, you know, they're going to fight a dragon, or they're about to fight a big horde, and, you know, Grog's on his knees in front of his uncle who'd beaten the absolute living tar out of him. And he just kind of sees to the rooftops, everybody's there to back him up. and he just shouts out Vox Machina, fuck shit up.
Yeah.
And boom, you know, great massive battle ensues, and it's because they've got his back. But it's when they drop the needle on, you know, again, there's a host of fantastic musical numbers written by Sam Riegel as well. Some filthy, most filthy, that are good anyway. I mean,
fourth season either, I will say, because he's not in it as much, so you don't get a lot of them. And
No.
it's that you get the Christ, I can't remember the character's name. There's like the Red Devil guy who's on a red mage hand, who plays a lot of death metal sounding stuff.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed the little bits that him and Scanlan have where they're battling with each other. I did think that was quite a cool sequence.
Yeah, we definitely missed a bad. But you know, getting the anal beads song, for Christ's sake, you know, you don't really see many TV shows out there that would just out and out just sing about anal beads. You just don't. You just don't. But again, like you say, those emotional heavy moments, you know, something happens in the fourth season to one of the characters, and I didn't expect that to happen. And when that happened to that character and they just disappear, I was like, the fuck? Like a huge emotional gut punch. And
yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Episode 9, right at the end of episode 9.
Yeah.
I absolutely was like, oh my god, you've killed that character. Fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck, I was not expecting that.
No. And again, I know some of what the future holds for some of these people, and rah. You know, yes, we'll get to Easter eggs further down the line in the other campaigns for these guys, and that's great. But just when, you know, we've said this 1,000 times, when you find a show and you find a cast of people, and you become emotionally invested, and you become invested in the story and invested in the characters, that's the hook, line, and sinker for me. If you can get a series that can do that, then you're a winner for me. There are too many of those shows these days where, okay, yeah, you've got a bit of a passionate audience base, but that'll wane quite quickly. This is one of those ones where they've kept their passionate fan base from D&D, and they've just picked up an entirely new one just based on the animated. I know half dozen people at least who've watched the animated series and then gone and watched some of the D&D stuff. I also know half dozen people who watched the D&D stuff before the animated series came out. So I think they're winners on both sides of that equation, really.
Yeah, absolutely. One has fed the other, and the other has fed back to yeah, absolutely. Like you say, season 3, campaign 3 is the only one that I've listened to in its entirety thus far. So I'm still holding out hope for a Hell's Bells series at some point, just because I want to see the finale of that on screen, to be honest, because I think it'd be incredible.
Yeah, I think we're going to get there. I think hopefully we'll get
well,
there.
Isn't it? They keep giving them. You know, 99's got a season 2. Fox got a season 5.
Yeah,
you know, they're clearly doing enough numbers on Amazon for them to be happy to keep funding it. So
yeah,
let's keep going, build this universe, because that's the fucking awesome thing about it, is that because you are existing in the same universe, you get the interplays. As you say, there's bunches of Easter eggs. We could sit here all day talking about Easter eggs on things on shelves and posters in backgrounds and
Tusk Love. Just Tusk Love alone is just
exactly. You know, there is, and there's a bit in, again, it's Mighty Nine, but I'm sure there's a bit in an episode there where someone's talking, they say, oh, it's as pompous as a Dorolo or something, you know, and those, you only know that if you watch Vox and you know who Dorolo is, and you know what station he's at, and you can then understand that that's become part of common lexicon, you know, to describe the upper class, you know.
Yeah, I think what's been enjoyable having watched both series is that it's not imperative to have watched Vox Machina to watch Mighty Nine, and it's not imperative that you watch Mighty Nine if you've watched Vox Machina. They are separate entities within the shared universe. Will there be bleed-throughs eventually? Yeah, of course I believe that's going to... and you know, anybody sensible enough would do.
In Mighty Nine, there'll be times where, that, you know, someone will reference the I forget what they call it, but, you know, they'll reference all the dragons that were killed, the Chroma Conclave being overthrown, and you know, they'll reference that as a world event that happened 10 years ago or whatever it is. I forget what the exact time jump is, but each of the campaigns is time jumped a few years ahead after the last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
I think we'll get really interesting stuff as it goes on, and then all right, we're doing we're watching Mighty Nine, and can we bring Vox Machina in for a bit of a cameo in this or something? You get to those sort of points building your shared universe, but again, they haven't gone into this like a DC extended universe did, going, right, let's start with Justice League, and it's like, no, you need 4 or 5 movies to set the groundwork for the individual characters before you can do the team up. And that's very much what this is. It's a slow build. Okay, well, we've got this series. Well, let's do what we want to do for this series. And then if we get something else, we can tie them together. Oh, well, we've got this one now. Oh, great. Okay, so we can weave a few more threads into this one from the other one then, and so on and so forth. I hope they carry on doing it the way they're doing it.
Yeah, I think the way that the series has been so far, again, they've had a good relationship with the studio they're working with, Titmouse. I'd seen various other Titmouse productions before, and I think it's a great, the artwork very much matches the feel for the show. Sometimes, you can watch an anime or you can watch an animated show, and it just doesn't always necessarily feel like it's gelling together. But they've got a great working relationship, I think. Whether they've, I couldn't tell you whether Titmouse have won any of the awards for it. But again, some of the battle sequences that they have put together are absolutely phenomenal. Like you say, the fact that they will have been in a campaign and they'll have, a full 4 hours of a battle that was ongoing, between all of the players and all of the dice rolls, and this happened and that happened, that somebody has actually probably gone through some of these big battles and written a 4.5 hour transcript and compressed it into like 4 sentences. And then they've been able to do the artwork for that. I think that's absolutely, they've probably got all of the descriptors that they would ever need. You get slammed into this wall and this happens. And again, there's certain liberties, but it's rare that I think you would get a animation studio in this day and age with such an abundance of information that it's actually, we've actually got 4.5 hours of transcript of what happens, where happens, how it's described, everything it's supposed to look like. How much of an easy job do you think they've got in some ways?
Yeah. It's interesting looking into Titmouse, to be fair. Did you know that they did animated sequences in 3 episodes of Community? It does list the episodes. A Fistful of Paintballs.
Yeah, I can imagine that one, yeah.
Foosball and Nocturnal Vigilantism. And Digital Estate Planning. Apparently they did the animation for those.
Yeah.
So they did the intro, the opening for Afro Samurai. So like not the series itself, but the intro.
Just the opening. Okay, yeah.
But that's like early career stuff.
Yeah.
And then they start to get to, the stuff they've done themselves. So like you said, they did Lower Decks. They did Big Mouth for Netflix. And then they kind of partnered up with, they did the Animaniacs reboot. They did 2D animated sequences in WandaVision and Loki, and they did the animated backstory sequence from Mythic Quest. They did some Looney Tunes stuff recently. They've got quite an interesting thing. They did the Beavis and Butthead reboot at the same time as Vox. They did some bits on Love, Death and Robots on Netflix. They did animated sequences in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Like, they've got quite an interesting back catalog.
Oh, that'll be the Lower Decks crossover, I'd imagine.
It's like they're listed as doing additional work on the Invincible animated series. Yeah, it's quite an interesting background looking through them. Very interesting to see where they started and where they've ended up. Yeah.
Again, I hope we'll get one more season of Vox. I feel season 6 will cap it off. Now they've obviously had to change some of the names and whatnot. The name Vecna is no longer in use to them, which is why he's called the Whispered One. But I do love that you've got Andy Serkis playing that role. I think that's just
Why don't they use the name Vecna then?
because Wizards of the West Coast or whatever they're called,
Wizards
which is Haribo.
Not Haribo.
Not Haribo, Hasbro.
Hasbro.
Jesus Christ, Haribo and Hasbro. You know what? That's a combination. They can just buy each other out, like Haribo and Hasbro. Yeah. That's actually completely thrown me now. All I can imagine is sweets
the
made
name,
of...
the demon in Stranger Things. I'm pretty sure the demon in season 4 of Stranger Things was
Yes,
Vecna.
he is. Yes. So again, because
for that then, or
so no. So obviously, because of because they were building a D&D world and blah blah blah, they could use the word Vecna because he was that kind of existing character and stuff like that. So that was the name of him during that campaign. But because of legalities now, they can't call him Vecna in the animated show because of legal reasons.
Interesting.
So they call him the Whispered One, which kind of actually sounds a little bit, everybody's like, Vecna, he was in Stranger Things. Stranger Things, I did it.
Yeah, shit. I think it's a good choice either way. Because, the Whispered One sounded, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, that sounds like a D&D name. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, let's just say, hopefully, this will, we'll get a couple of, at least one more series out of this. We'll get a continuation of the Mighty Nine, which we'll revisit a little bit further on. Again, hopefully the Critical Role guys will be around for a good little while. There's rumours that there's another animated show in the works, which would be fantastic because I think we know which one that would be. But that will probably come out after Vox is done and probably another season of Mighty Nine is done. There's rumours that there's going to be a live action of something, potentially the Cataclysm, which occurred during the season 3 campaign. So we'll see. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. But one thing I will also mention to you, dude, because I know that you'd be interested. One of the things, if you are at all interested in all things Critical Role, they were really good and supported a game last year, which came out, and it's called Dispatch. For anybody who currently has Amazon Prime, you can actually play this game for free. If you go to Amazon and go in through Luna, in through Amazon Prime Gaming, it is currently free to play for anybody. So if you didn't know that, you do now. So a lot of the voice actors from Vox Machina, Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham, Matt Mercer amongst them, I believe are some of the various voice actors on it. Well worth a go. They invested and helped finalize the production of the game as well because investors backed out and the various things that go along with video game development, which they are all too familiar with. So again, something wouldn't surprise me further down the line if they end up doing a game, whether we get a, World of Warcraft kind of MMO online in the world of Exandria. I mean, I'd be one to join in there and probably take a week off of work and do it, but that's just me.
They've worked quite closely with Abubakar because Abubakar runs a game studio. So that he set up a game studio a few years ago. So Abubakar Salim, I think his surname is.
Yeah, I think he's starring in their next Age of Umbra, which is their own Daggerheart series.
He was a voice in Thingy. I'm trying to find him now, but I can't find him. There he is. He was a voice as Anror. But obviously he's been in the actual Critical Role thing a few times. He's been in and out as like a guest character a few times. Yes, Dispatch, for those that don't know, it did review very well. It was very positive. It is made by the people who used to work at Telltale Games. And Telltale Games did a Walking Dead sort of narrative, story-driven thing. They did a Batman one. They did a Big B Wolf one, I think, actually, based on Fables.
Yep.
So it is, that studio fell apart and shut down. And people from that went and formed a new studio and wanted to continue making the same kind of games. So they made Dispatch, which is a superhero. You are a superhero dispatcher. So you have a bunch of superheroes and they've got different, different things that they're good at. And you have different calls coming in from the city and you have to send the right people out to go and do it. but there's relationship management between your characters, so they can date each other, they can have arguments, and so on and so forth. And then that
Decisions have consequences.
Exactly, and that can affect your ability to dispatch them into the field depending on what happens. So yeah, I played a little bit of it. I haven't finished it, but I did play a few hours of it and quite enjoyed it. It was released in episodes, I think, over a period of about 6 weeks. So I played it when there was only a couple of episodes out, because I have a feeling it was on Game Pass or something, and it was one of those ones that I was like, oh, I'll give this a shot. I'm hearing good things about it, and I did quite enjoy it. Any final points that you want to make?
Hopefully, those who've stuck around for the rest of this pod found it entertaining. And if you haven't watched Vox and you're interested, then please do don't give it a watch. There's 4 full series there for you to watch, and then the accompanying Mighty Nine. And then if you're suddenly enthralled by the world of Critical Role, then I thoroughly encourage you to go and have a look on YouTube, watch a few videos, and immerse yourself into that universe, and that'll chew up a good chunk of your time.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just about to go into my summer holiday period, and that is normally the time when I go back to Crit Roll. Well, yeah. Have you got any wise words you'd like to leave the people with this week? I'm going to try and play us out with one of Scanlan's songs. It'll be so if you hear a song at the end of this, know that YouTube allowed me to do it without copyright striking us. If you don't hear a song at the end of this, YouTube copyright struck us. Copyright struck? Right? Struck it? I don't know. YouTube were dicks. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, gonna go with a quote, and it seems very appropriate for Vox.
Mm-hmm.
Ethics are a luxury we can't currently afford.
Yeah. Yes. I would argue there's quite a few political figures at the minute that I would think would say the same thing. They'd be wrong and lying, but I think they'd probably say the same thing. Well, with that then, I shall say that I have been Bab.
And I have been Fluff.
And this was Screen